when we were all together in the boot camp, it felt like home. So I really felt like these are some of the people that are exactly like me.
Our featured speaker today is the co-founder and chief technology officer of edtech company LearnOBots, where he's making learning playful, fun, and interactive for future generations of leaders and problem solvers. Shamyl, it's a great pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Spencer, for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We all are from different time zones. So my name is Shamyl. As Nancy introduced me, I'm the co-founder, one of the co-founders of LearnOBots. We're an edtech company started back in 2014, and I'd love to share my experience of how I got started and got interested in this particular education problem, and how I've been working in this domain for the past 7 years, and what are our plans for the future. Back in 2014, I was actually an assistant professor at a university here in Pakistan, and I was teaching to undergrad students. And one of the most interesting things that I found was that I had, kids in my class with different kind of backgrounds. So some of them, were very tech savvy, but there were others who, had never had a lot of exposure to technology. And here I was trying to teach them, courses like programming and data structures and algorithms, and trying to, motivate them to solve problems. But I found this huge gap where kids didn't have any exposure to technology or tools that we wanted to use. And I found this problem where it was hard to create a uniform learning environment in my class, especially with kids who didn't have exposure to a lot of technology. And I found myself, giving boring lectures. So I wanted to, make my lectures more interesting, make them more fun. I 3D printed a few robots, and I tried experimenting with my coding class. And there I found, that kids, even these was like undergrad first semester students, but they loved the course. And then I experimented with a bit of game design in the very first course, where you know it's like the 101, that's the CS 101 kind of course where you learn the basics of coding and logic. And I used some different tools where they had to like make games. But at that time I kind of realized that it's a bit too late, to do these kind of experiments. And I started looking into this at the this problem at the school level, where I found that the education has been, or the classroom has been similar. So if you look at let's say um, let's say the history of flight. So we've gone from the first flight in 1905 or 96 to landing on the moon in the 60s. And if you look at other technologies in the past like 100 years, we've had huge developments, and they're by leaps and bounds. But education has remained the same in the past 100 years. In fact, there's a very interesting image where there's a snapshot of a classroom from early, let's say, 20th century, and there's a snapshot of a classroom now, and it's exactly the same. So that's where I kind of discovered that this is a huge problem, and I got really interested into it. And that's in 2014. This was like back in 2014. And I discussed this with my co-founder, who was basically a graduate of the same university that I was teaching in. So he was a former student. And we kind of sat down, and we decided to do something about it. And we designed our first workshop, 3D printed a few robots, designed a bit of curriculum, invited like everyone of any age group. And we found that the first workshop was a big success. Everybody loved it. And that's when we realized, this is something that we could do, and this could basically solve, the education problem that we have. And once I started looking into it, I realized, I used to be, when I was studying, there were certain courses that I did not like, and then there were certain courses I liked. And digging more into it, it turns out there are like there are different kind of theories available, and there are different kind of things that you can do to make learning fun. In fact, there's by MIT's professor, the rule is called, and it basically enables kids to learn about blog to make games and create videos through blocks based programming. And I started looking into more of these tools, and I found these tools are really helpful in making learning fun. And that's when we kind of formally started LearnOBots, and started designing our own curriculums, started using different kind of tools, designing different kits, and started working with schools. And that's kind of how I got started into starting the startup.
Thank you so much. That's an amazing story. And I can tell just how passionate you are. I was wondering if you could take us back a little bit into your journey and just tell us a little bit about some of the early mentors perhaps that influenced you to go in this direction and some of your personal development.
So that's kind of interesting. When I started, it was mostly we were interested in the problem itself. So in the beginning, it was like really we were on our own. I don't remember having any mentors at that time. So I was teaching, and I was like part time doing this. So if you go back to the initial years, I don't remember having any mentors at that time. And if I look at it now, I think that's something that we should have done. We should have found advisors or mentors with more experience than us, that could have helped us accelerate in the beginning. But we kind of learned off the job. So coming from an academic background, so I had a background in engineering, and I did a couple started teaching, and or doing a startup was completely new to me and my co-founder. So we kind of learned on the job in the beginning.
That's awesome. And I really loved from your story talking about how you saw this problem and you immediately started trying to find ways to fix it by getting other people coming in and experimenting and kids playing. I think it's such an exciting avenue you've gone for this. I was hoping you could explain a little bit more about the LearnOBots STEAM domain fusion education model.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So when we started, it was about making learning fun. And as we, started to learn more about this problem, we found that, the traditional education model is all about, teaching subjects independently. So when we study kind of, mathematics, it's like a subject on its own. And when we study, let's say biology or chemistry, they're like, independent subjects. But there is this new methodology where, which is basically called the STEM or the STEAM approach for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, where you combine these subjects in a more practical, hands-on manner. So it's all about creating like a problem-solving mindset, and you can choose different themes. So, for example, when we were designing our curriculums, so we created this interesting problem where the kids had a robot to find water on the surface of Mars. This was like I think a few years ago when we were actually designing this. So we had this idea, let's create an environment where we would tell them, you're on the surface of Mars. You have to program this robot. You have to add a sensor, which and we would place water somewhere, and they would have to program the robot to avoid obstacles and find water. Turns out, right at that weekend, there was an announcement by scientists that they had found traces of water on Mars. So that was like a really fun coincidence that happened at that time. So it's all about creating a theme based learning environment where you let the kids explore a problem and then give them the required tools and the skill set, and they can actually start solving those problems, and that kind of creates that experiential learning experience for kids, and it basically becomes a lot more fun as well.
I love that idea, and I love how you were talking about turning your passions, channeling them into productive hobbies. And I was wondering if you can explain, without giving away your secret sauce, explain a little bit more how you see that LearnOBots really does help kids identify those passions.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So we believe that every kid needs exposure to different themes and different domains. And we found that kids get inspired because of their environments. And we found this problem here in my country that due to limited exposure, kids only go for a few careers. So they're either becoming engineers or either becoming doctors or maybe joining, let's say, the forces like the Air Force or the Army, because that's some of the careers that they can only see and they only get exposed to. So our idea was to give these our kids an environment where they can explore different technologies, so and different basically domains. So they can explore making rockets, they can play with robots, they can create art, and they can use programming languages to create art. And so that the idea was to make them go all these domains, so give them exposure and then let them find their own passion. And I'll share some a very interesting example. So there was this girl who was part of our workshops, and when she came in, we generally ask a few questions of the kids. What do you want to become? What are your interests? And she had this idea that she wanted to become a doctor. And once she went through our program, like for a few months, she had such a turnaround that she exactly knew what she wanted to do. So she wanted to become a doctor, but after our program, she exactly knew. So just after finishing the program with us, she exactly knew what she wanted to become. Eventually, and she wanted to become a mechatronics engineer. So we completely changed her thought process. She wanted to become a doctor because that was the influence from her home, probably from her surroundings at home. But once she went through our workshops, she loved robotics. I mean, she loved playing with robots and coding robots. And now she's actually probably, I think she's going to enter university in a couple of years. Yeah.
That's awesome. I really love hearing about other engineers coming out into the field and what inspires them. And it's so cool to know, as you said, like kids, if they're only exposed to a limited number of jobs, they're only going to be able to choose within them. But your approach of exposing them to a larger range, having such a positive impact, is very exciting. I was hoping to, given the complexity of the education sector, I was hoping to understand what you did to make sure you set up your business fundamentals the right way from the beginning, with the competing sort of both ambitions as well as for financial success and education, taking care of people in that regard, as well as knowing that education is such a complex field.
Yeah, that's again a very interesting question. So, starting in Pakistan, education is definitely a very difficult market. And when we started, it initially it was hard to convince schools and school administrators to basically accept this new kind of model. So initially we had a very tough time of getting into schools. I mean, we could not get meetings. They would not kind of understand what we were doing. Even if we would get meetings, they would not understand it. They would not want to pay for anything like this. But eventually, we kind of still. So instead of going to schools, we started having our own workshops. So since I was teaching at a university, so what we did was and university had like these teaching labs that were free on the weekends. So we, kind of rented those labs on the weekends, and we started, marketing on Facebook. So we started targeting parents, and turns out parents are very like interested in these kind of jobs, and that's where we started getting kids in. And so our main source of let's say getting customers was through Facebook marketing. And but so one of the things that we did was we since we are a very small company with a very let's say 4 or 5 employees in the beginning, we just recorded what was happening in the workshop. So we just took a few pictures. So these were like raw pictures, what's actually happening in the workshops over the weekends, and we would just put them up on Facebook. And that kind of became really popular. So people loved what the kids were doing. The parents loved them, and eventually the parents started pushing their schools. They wanted their schools to start something like this. And then instead of us going to schools, the schools started coming to us. that's how our business model kind of evolved on its own.
And can you kind of take us through how your business model works now? Because I understand that you're still, working with schools, but I was actually sort of wondering about how it works on a day-to-day basis for you.
Sure. So when we started, when we started, we had to do a number of different things innovatively. So we don't have a lot of STEM teachers or trainers available. And interestingly, in Pakistan, and I think there are other South Asian countries as well, teaching is not a career that many people get attracted to. So the first thing that we did was to kind of hire engineers and kind of trick them into saying that you're making robots, but we eventually made them like trainers and teachers. So that's one of the things that we did. So this model that we used to work with was pretty trainer oriented or HR intensive. So it wasn't very scalable because we had to train talent. We had to teach them, So one of our philosophies is, learning with fun and playful learning. So we had to instill that kind of philosophy into them. And it turns out, in fact, we've learned a lot. But it turns out that if you don't have the kind of fun-loving personality, if you're a serious kind of guy, I mean, you're not a great. You don't become a great, like, let's say, trainer at LearnOBots. So we had to find fun-loving people who love doing stuff, who are passionate about this, and we had to train them to become trainers. However, like 3 or 4 years into this business, we realized that this is not a very scalable model. And that's when we started working on a new product that's an e-learning portal for STEM education or STEAM education. And we've taken our learnings from our previous business model and taken that experiential learning and that fun philosophy and put it into this, this product where kids can actually and schools can actually sign up and they can execute the similar kind of experiential learning in their schools without having to have a very experienced STEM. So we've basically a gamified learning platform where we use simulators. We've designed simulators for robotics and different other domains. So the model has kind of changed to a SaaS-based model, which is kind of more scalable than the HR-intensive model that we had previously. So this is what we're doing right now.
That's awesome. And that's interesting. I love hearing about when companies pivot and what makes the decision, what sort of causes the decision to make that pivot. I'd love to be to sort of understand a little bit more about how your leadership style has evolved over the course of this process, especially comparing the more hardware focused time and then a more software focused time now.
Right. So so as we were like growing the business, we kind of had this problem where schools would big chains of schools. So there are different like schooling models in Pakistan. So there are private schools and there are government schools. We mostly target private schools, and then there were like there are schools that have like huge chains. They have like 100 to 100 like in all over the country. And then when we had when we started having talks with them and they wanted our product, we just could not provide them because we just did not have the scale for that. And that's when this realization came, that we have to find a solution to that. So it's still the I guess both co-founders, both of us are like have an engineering background. So whenever we find a problem, we go for trying to understand how we can find a solution to that. And that's what we naturally realize. If this is an HR intensive model, that's not scalable at all. So that's kind of that made us realize we have to find a more scalable model, and that's when we kind of changed and pivoted to a more digital model.
That's kind of an incredible pivot. I have a question too. I know you said LearnOBots has existed for 7 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's amazing. So I really wonder if, well, you can tell me, what do you think you feel like you did right, even if you didn't consciously do it in setting up your business fundamentals in the beginning?
Right. So I can definitely tell you maybe we made a lot of mistakes. So I'm if you're doing it right now, even. So there's always this learning mode that we are in, and what we are doing right. So we are always looking at things that we're doing wrong, rather than thinking of things that we're doing right. Um, so I think we definitely, the pivot was really important. I think that's one of the things that we did right at the right time, because that's something we would not have had a scalable model, and we would always been limited to would have been a very small business.
I really appreciate your honesty, though. I think mistakes are part of the journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you showing us so much honesty in your answers and really taking the time to dig deep on those things. I know that sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but I feel like it's so much more beneficial for everyone. I was hoping to get an idea of from your perspective. Obviously, the things you're doing with LearnOBots is to improve education. But I was hoping, from your perspective, what are things in a grand sweeping stroke sort of thing globally that could be done to improve education? What ways do you think education currently isn't working in how it should?
Yeah. Again, great question, because that question kind of plugs into our vision. So what really is happening is that technology is getting fused with different domains, and the jobs are really changing, and this is going to have a great impact. And if we don't adopt, if we don't change the way we educate the kids right now, it's going to have huge cause huge problems for all of us. And so for example, so we've got the fusion of technology with, let's say, finance has created blockchain and cryptocurrency, and similarly the fusion of technology with other domains is creating new kind of jobs. And in fact, there are statistics by World Bank and the Economic Forum that tell us that 65% of the jobs that exist today will completely cease to exist. That basically means we don't even know what the future jobs will be. So some of the things that we can do right now is to these learning environments where kids can actually think of skills like problem solving and communication and creativity. So these are like 21st century skills that we would want the kids to have experience. Right now what schools do is they kind of create an environment where it's all about learning and repeating something, a certain concept, but that work. I mean, we know that companies, top tech companies, they don't even want degrees anymore. They're looking for skills. So existing schooling method has to completely change, but of course the change cannot happen overnight. So that's why we are kind of slowly these technologies into education. So for example, in Europe, and even I know that even in England, kids at a very young age are being taught a little bit about coding and problem solving, and that's just the start. And you've got after school clubs, so there are not number of tools that schools are using, but that's just one of the domains. Personally, we believe that kids should have access to things like any kind of new technology that comes in. So for example, they should know how to use IoT in solving their problems. They should know how to use robots to solve their certain problems. So it's all about creating that problem solving mindset, because the future jobs that are coming in, we don't know what those jobs will be. So for example, some of the predictions are that some of the jobs will be like an AI and we don't even have a degree about AI ethics, for AI ethicists or creating AI ethicists, because AI has a problem. I mean, we know that the current models that we have are causing the AI to make wrong decisions. So we need people to train for these kind of jobs. Then there are jobs like asteroid mining. So that's something cited as a very exciting career choice. So we believe that to the current education system has to change. We need more more activities that enable a solving and creative mindset in kids. And I trying to make that change.
I really appreciate your tangible examples of preparing kids for the careers of tomorrow. That requires so much creativity on your end too. Just staying in the know about how science and technology are evolving and sort of predicting where those things might go. Um, can you talk to me a little bit more about the leadership team in your company too? Because I do believe that every great idea could either become an amazing company or just die, depending on that team. So how did your original team come together, and how has it sort of evolved over these 7 years?
So the original team was two co-founders, and we are still two co-founders, but we've brought in a few advisors. So when we started off with a model that was not a SaaS-based model, we kind of learned, the hard um, how to basically, get more customers, and you know, but it took us more time because we weren't natural to it. In fact, we were a bit natural because I'm the techie guy. My co-founder is the business guy, and he just, he's pretty good at sales and with customers. But now we've gotten more advisors who are helping us with the scaling part. So yeah, that's how it's kind of changed so we're still two co-founders, but we've brought in a number of advisors.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Based on having brought in a couple of advisors, I was hoping you could dig a little bit deeper into how you can tell if someone would be a good advisor and how you sort of manage that advisor-founder relationship.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. So we have an advisor. He gave us a perspective from the outside. So we were really focused on when we were doing the same thing again and again for such a long time. It kind of became hard to think out of the box. So one of the things was to this advisor kind of helped us think, especially in our strategy. So how to move from the previous model to the new model, and helped us understand the kind of the mistakes that we were making, and we found that to be really, really useful. So I think if you want to find an advisor, find someone who can help you, who can by the way be straight. So initially it was pretty uncomfortable, when someone was telling you what you thought. I mean, we thought we were like doing great, but when this third guy comes in and tells you, these are the mistakes that you're making, initially it was really uncomfortable, but eventually it helped us learn the things that we weren't able to see, doing the same thing over and over again. So I think now I understand why advisors are really important, especially who have that kind of experience, who have had that kind of experience before with startups. I hope I answered your question.
I think that was an excellent answer. And I think it's one of those things that people don't know super well, how, like, what the advantages are for an advisor and how to sort of manage that relationship. I was hoping I could ask you additionally about, in a more personal sense, how do you manage your work-life balance? How do you sort of focus on the work without letting it overflow into the rest of your life?
I think I've done it pretty badly. So it's been really hard. It's been really, really hard. In the past 5-6 years, in the initial like 3 to 4 years of the company, I balanced my life. It really affected my personal life. But now I've come to the realization, that you have to have that work-life balance, and so it was like it did affect my life as well. But now I've realized, it's important to make sure that have to have that work-life balance, and one of the things that I've found is that and I've seen it in most successful people, they're like really disciplined. So I'm having a bit of trouble, finding discipline in my life. by discipline, I mean, you have to wake up early, you have to have everything like scheduled. So if you wake up early, you get all the things done in the morning. Make sure you have some time in the evening for yourself and then for your family as well. So I know that is important, although it's really hard to implement. It's easier said than done. But trying hard to get that work-life balance right.
Certainly is. I definitely think that's one of those things. There's really no perfect answer because what we need continues to evolve and change, as do we. So I appreciate your honest share. I really do. I was kind of wondering, what your future vision is, not just in a LearnOBot sense, but for yourself as an entrepreneur. Is there any either related problem or totally different sort of problem that you would like to at least be part of solving at some point in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now it's LearnOBots. It's been this like for the past 7 years. But starting LearnOBots, I've always loved solving problems, and I've just always had this affinity for tech. As me and were talking in the beginning, I loved playing with tech toys. I still do. So I mean, LearnOBots helped me. We backed a lot of kids on Kickstarter when we wanted it. There was this new robot coming out, and then design our own robots. So I really love solving problems, and I think the skill set that I've learned, the skill set that I've got right now, I would really love to use that to solve more problems in the world. So, for example, I would love to solve the problem of poverty, the food problem, eventually. So all the the major the world is facing, like that kind of everyone, especially my country. So I would love to attack those problems once I'm not working in education in some time in the future.
That's awesome. And I think those are the kinds of problems that people really need, like we need as a society, more and more people looking into. But I also agree that education is one of those problems that if we don't have improvements to education constantly, then we'll have generations that get left behind by the technology. Now, I believe you attended the 2019 bootcamp. I was hoping I could ask you about that. What prompted your interest in attending the MIT bootcamp? And were there any tools that you found from the disciplined entrepreneurship framework which were particularly useful?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons was the community, was getting access to I'm really inspired by the professors working at MIT. So one of the reasons was you could attend their lectures over there. So I love that part. Initially it was that excitement, you get to work with the MIT professors, you get to attend their lectures, and of course you can learn of things, a number of things from them. um, However, the thing that I most loved about it was when we were all together in the boot camp. It felt like home. So I really felt like these are some of the people that are exactly like me. So that's one of the most interesting things, and I love that. And one of the things that I really learned from that is that before attending that, I used to study a lot about how to get access to customers, how to talk to customers. I had read a few books, we had done things like that, but in the first task that we got, the assignment, it was talking to 30 people to the problem that we're solving, and 30, like, let's say, clients. And that's and that day I realized it's not that difficult, because I mean that we should go and talk to customers, but I really did not do that. I mean, we found ways where we could understand what the customer wants, but directly talking to them, understanding what they exactly want, we were not doing that correctly.
Yes, and I really appreciated what you were saying about, kind of. I'm going to poorly reword this, but kind of meeting other people and feeling like you were among your people. I think that is a feeling that many of us have indicated, and we're hoping that we have actually brought in some additional entrepreneurs that have been referred by friends to this Founders Voyage community, and we're hoping that this has that same sort of feeling.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It is. So I'm hoping. In fact, I think you guys are planning on something like physical meetups because I think I mean the online thing does work. Physical meetups are the best thing ever, and it's that community when you talk when you meet people physically in real life. That's where the fun comes from, right?
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of where the fun started that launched this community. So we'll have to talk about that. I don't know what the timeline will be for that, but I am very interested and hopeful about doing that at some point.
Yeah, I definitely think we're interested in doing more live events. I have a question from one of the listeners. Dear Shamyl, I'm very enthusiastic to hear about your personal story and about your successful educational startup. I have a few questions for you. 1. What kept you going and staying optimistic the moment you realized the schools did not accept your product and embrace your vision, up until the moment when parents suggested it to the schools? For example, did you have another job at the time? Was it sufficient financial resources, etc.? I'm wondering because most startups tend to fail at that specific point, and your perseverance and thinking outside of the box mentality turned into success. 2. At what point during your success did you quit the teaching position? 3. Are you planning on globally scaling your startup? Love to hear these answers, Shamyl.
So initially, when we had trouble with acceptance from schools, I think it was the initial time where we were really passionate about what we were doing, and it was also the excitement of first time founders. So I was a first time founder, so I was really excited. So I guess the excitement and the pure optimism got us through that difficult time. Because as founders are mostly very optimistic. They think they can they can solve all the world. So I think that got us through that. uh, and sometimes we did have low moments, but somehow one thing or the other kind of motivated us back on track. So for example, I remember we're having a downtime, and I don't remember the exact reason. Maybe we had a there was something, but then we got an email from MIT actually, and they had seen one of our weekend camps that was covered by Hackaday, which is a very popular website, and they wanted to put it up on their own website, and that got us excited. First, I thought that was like that typical spam mail. It was a real email, so that got us really excited. And then when you work with kids, I mean, they have got this energy that if you start talking to them, if you start working with them, you start seeing them, it just keeps you going. So that's one way. Well, that was one way of doing it. Regarding financial resources, so that's a great question. So I was also teaching. So I was like doing this part time, and I was teaching, and this was like 4 years into LearnOBots till I did that. And when it was eventually stable, then I quit my teaching job and took on LearnOBots full time. So you're definitely right. So it was not able to sustain salaries for the founders, but it was we were able to the company itself. So as founders, we weren't taking any salaries. We were kind of sustaining on our savings, and I was sustaining through my teaching job. But the company was able to sustain itself through that period.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. And actually, you hit on her second question, which was at what point during your success did you actually quit your teaching position? And her last question is, are you planning to globally scale your startup?
So as I mentioned earlier, that we pivoted with our offline model to a more scalable SaaS, and we right now by creating partnerships. So we have created a partnership in the Middle East. We have created another partnership in the UK, and we are in talks with another partner in the US, where we are finding like-minded people within the edtech domain who want to use our product, or who are already in who would want to add a new their list, and that's our plan of scaling right now. So we've already launched one of the models in the UAE and in the UK. Working with our partners to find schools and pitch our product to them.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing them whilst I'm talking to people here in the UK. I think it's very exciting. Now, I do notice that we're just about at the hour point. We at the end of each of the talks, we tend to ask this one question, and we do want you to interpret it as very free form, take it sort of in the way that best suits you. But the question is, what do you think has been the best lesson or takeaway from your journey so far? / do you have any words of wisdom that you might want to leave with us?
Hmm. Um, that's a difficult one because I think I've learned a lot of things um, during the course of this journey. I've learned a lot of different things, but loved every part. So there have been ups and downs, and I think that will kind of I'm not sure if I can share a lot of wisdom, but that kind of answers the second question as well. That there are going to be ups and downs, a lot of ups and downs, but if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're going to quit because some days are like really really down, so you're really really down, and some days you're really excited. So it's a really up and down journey, but passion that keeps you going. So if you have the of what you're trying to achieve, I'm pretty sure you're going to make it.
Well said. Yeah, I think continuing to feed that passion is something that I could see is important to you too. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today, Shamyl, both personally and professionally. We're always inspired walking away from these conversations, and we really hope that you are too. We really appreciate just how much time you took and also your patience with the technical hiccups today. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me. I think I really loved sharing my journey, and I hope everyone kind of can learn something from it.
Hey, yeah, Shamil, before we finish off, do you have time for one last question?
Sure, why not?
Thank you, thank you. My name is Muhib. I'm also in edtech. I wanted to ask you. So, I know you're working in edtech in high school, in particular in the STEAM area. Now, from my experience, what I heard a lot is that when you have STEAM products and you're approaching high schools, one of the biggest barriers tends to be teacher training. Is that you can have great content, but the teachers are not able to deliver it. How did you guys come solve that particular issue?
That's a great question, and that's definitely one of the major hiccups that does happen. So in our platform, what we've done is we've enabled the teachers. So we don't expect the teachers to be STEAM experts, but what we've done is we've created content for teachers to conduct these sessions. So we launch in any school, we do train the teachers. And specifically, we will look for teachers with an IT background. So there are like ICT teachers in different schools, and you know, we kind of try and find those teachers in a school, but we still create content that any teacher can actually conduct a session. And on our platform, so it's like instruction based. So follow instructions and do things, and things happen, and they start exploring, and they start experimenting and learning. Whereas the teacher kind of acts more of a facilitator. So we've tried to kind of remove the teacher as the main, stakeholder when they're teaching STEAM, specifically with a new platform. And but we are creating content so the teachers can, so they have all the they have the lesson plan. So we are, kind of trying to make the life of a teacher really easy. Uh, so let's hope it's going to work quickly, but we're trying to solve this like this.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hey, I think we're going to have to connect you two offline too. I think I'm really glad that you could join today, Mahib. I know it's a lot later where you are, so thank you.
Yeah, no worries, Shamil. I have sent you a LinkedIn request. I would love to talk to you more later on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd love to talk.
Right. Thank you so much, guys. It's great to come back and join again.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said to Shamyl in the beginning, this is exactly why we're motivated to continue what I kind of term a cooperative learning experience. So let's definitely keep these conversations going offline, and we look forward to having those of you available to join us next week. So have a great week, everyone, and have a great morning, afternoon, and evening ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Shamyl. Have a great day, everyone.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.